Hey, welcome to another episode of the Mental Health Takeaways. We have a friend of both of ours, a friend of mine and Brad's, on the show this week. A guy called Colin, but we call him Colin. We call him Skinsy, Skin Dog. I can't remember. Brad, we got any other names for him?
And not that we can broadcast.
But he's a friend of ours anyway, so the conversation flows pretty easily. He touches on the themes of grief and stress, grief by way of bereavement. So we'd like to direct people to the Bereavement Advice Centre, which is available at, if you just do a Google search for the Bereavement Advice Centre, which in the UK is on the free phone number of 0800 634 9494. And they advise people after death in England and Wales, and their website and helpline provide help with a wide range of practical issues that need to be managed after bereavement, as well as signposting to other support. So given the themes that crop up in today's episode, that's an important one. Brad, do you think the stuff that Colin shared about bereavement is going to be stuff that will be applicable to some of our listeners?
Yeah, I thought it was really useful. I thought he spoke really openly and really honestly. We had a lot of laughs along the way in our episode, actually, which we actually talked about how important that was. He talked about how important that was for him to be able to approach those things. We know, again, a show packed full of takeaways. Really, really good advice, things that helped him along the way, and in some really dark times that he went through, but has come out the other side of those times and is in a great place. And we now know a new baby is on the way as well. So yeah,
world exclusive.
World exclusive.
And also, I think what's really powerful about this episode is that Colin is a friend of mine and Brad's, and actually part of what we're trying to do here is show an example of what these conversations can look like. And you're probably more likely to be having these conversations with your friends than with complete strangers. So actually, a conversation between friends is hopefully going to serve as a really good example of what your conversations could look like if there's someone that you'd like to approach and have a conversation with about their mental health, but bringing in the subject of your mental health as well. Just showing how we can all share, talk about mental health, but have a laugh at the same time.
Check out the episode.
Although we release these on a Sunday morning, it's actually Friday evening at the time of recording. Okay. Traditional time for a takeaway. If you were to go for a takeaway today, what would it be? What would you go for?
Okay. Well, I'm a very tight farmer's son, so you're getting no lavish curries here. A curry is post 30 quid, isn't it? Really. So it's going to be a large mixed kebab, because that feeds the whole family on about 16 quid. I'm going to ask for an extra pita bread in the hope that he'll throw that in for free, and a mixed kebab which has got some doner meat in there. It's got chicken sheesh. It's got lamb kofta in there. That's where I'm going. It's going to have garlic sauce thrown in there. I want them to leave out the white onions. I hate that sense of a burp just before you go to bed.
Are you going to specify that?
Absolutely.
Okay, good.
Yeah, it's very clear. It's a large mixed kebab with an extra pita bread, garlic sauce. Hold the white onion, include everything else. As for the really hot pepper that they not pepper, it's a chili, isn't it? The hot chili that they throw in there. Happy to accommodate that, just to be nice. I want them to think that I do explore when I eat, but that goes in the bin every time.
This is a great answer, Skinner. So you said it'll feed the whole family. Who's it feeding?
It's feeding my wife Katie, and it's feeding my 4-year-old girl Sienna. And when the dog's around, it'll feed her as well. 100%. So it's like going to Lidl's. You get twice as much compared to any other takeaway. But yeah, that's what you get. That's what you get.
Are you getting joy and satisfaction from the feeling of getting a bargain? Like when I get a little win in life, just in general, like with it being the summer holidays at the moment, knowing places to take the kids on a budget, and actually that it being a good place to take the kids, not just cheap and shit. That always feels like a little bit of a win for me, and it feels like you've got yourself a little bit of a life hack there. Does that feel like a win for you?
Most definitely. I probably operate my entire life, and something that I probably will go on to talk about later is mini accomplishments. Having a mixed kebab at a bargain price is a mini accomplishment in life. I've got a bargain there. I'm feeding a lot of people on it. I'm going to feel great after, and I do actually feel good on a mixed kebab as well. That it's relatively healthy apart from the doner meat and maybe the garlic sauce, and possibly.
Well, just don't worry about the ingredients to it. Don't worry about coming on to mini achievements. Give us one now. What mini achievements have you had in life, or do you regularly get?
He's a high achiever.
This is going to sound ridiculous. For me, mini accomplishments are not what you're thinking. Like getting a certain grade at a GCSE or getting a certain classification in your degree or anything like that. For me, a mini accomplishment is as simple as making my bed in the morning once I've got out of it. Boom. Having my daily coffee, one coffee. It's two during the holidays, actually, I must confess. But one, having my one coffee made to specification, that's an accomplishment right there. Other accomplishments are boring work-based things, ticking the boxes. But mini accomplishments today. Do you want to hear about my mini accomplishments today?
Yes, please.
Clean the car in the van. Huge. Even polish the car. So for me, that's an accomplishment. I'm going to go to bed tonight thinking, yes, get in there. Nailed it.
That feels like a macro accomplishment to me.
Do you think?
Yeah, cleaning the car and van in a day.
Thank you.
The polishing for me, that's the next level, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It is. But it's good. I enjoy it.
Something I want to ask about there, Skinsy, is are you doing that deliberately as a positive mental health strategy, I suppose I'd phrase it as? Are you doing that on purpose, that you're deliberately noticing your achievements or accomplishments within the day? Or is it just something you've done and you found it feels nice, so you keep doing it?
I think it's something that I've become aware of as I enter middle-aged Bill. It's something that I've probably always done, but now I really recognise it. And I know that if I'm at home for an entire day or through periods of trauma that I've had in the past, the only way I get through those periods of time is through mini accomplishments. And for some people listening to this thinking, is this guy, is he having a laugh? He's cleaned his car and he's really happy about that. For me, that's a massive box tick. It's helped me through low times. When you really, both of you will relate to this, I'm sure. When you're really low, time moves really slowly, doesn't it?
100%.
Everything slows down, and all of a sudden, I think of Hugh Grant in the film About a Boy when I say this. You've got units of time in a day.
Yeah.
And each unit is worth 30 minutes. And Hugh Grant, I can't remember the examples that he gave in that film, but
plays snooker, has a bath, has a haircut.
Things like that. Mini accomplishments, little 30-minute chunks. And I'm not as aware of them now. I'm in a period of homeostasis at the moment. I feel good. I'm in a good place. For us as teachers, it's the summer holidays. It's the best time of the year. So I've got nothing really at the moment to feel sad about at all. But I still have to accomplish something every day. It's really weird. Yeah.
The two places I want to take that are, one is that it feels very closely linked to gratitude to me. That whole idea of being thankful, because there are people absolutely who would be of the mindset that they have to wash the car and they have to wash the van, and that is a chore for them. You have got the same obligations, but for you it's a treat and it's a little mini accomplishment. But it's the same people doing the same task, but it's how you approach it with your mindset that makes the difference from it being not just from a neutral to a positive, but it's from a negative to a positive, isn't it? So I think that's interesting, and I wonder if you had anything to say about that. And the other thing that I was just quickly going to say is I heard Katie Piper speaking recently. She was the chemical burns victim. She got attacked in the street, and how her going through her rehabilitation, that she was starting to feel really thankful for things. She didn't call them mini accomplishments, but things like when she got to the stage where she could go to the toilet on her own, which is something everybody else takes for granted. When she could do that, she found it to be a little mini accomplishment. But at the same time, she would also find that something small could still ruin her day. If somebody got her a coffee and it wasn't made the way she likes, then that was still like, I've had a crap coffee now. So I wondered if you could relate to any of that.
God, I do relate to what you said there about a crap coffee. We've just got back this week from an all-inclusive holiday to Crete, and it took me about 3 days to work out within this huge complex how to get a good coffee. And just like you've said there were a couple of days where it was one of these big machines, huge machines. You press the button, out the coffee comes, and it was rubbish. And I was getting frustrated. Like day 2, how do I get a good coffee around here? Because for me, that's one of my accomplishments, having a good coffee. Because I know how I do it at home, but getting it on holiday, I managed to work out. Basically, it was at the adult only food restaurant, which was like downstairs in the hotel. That was the only place I could get a good coffee, and that's where I would go to every day to hit and tick that mini accomplishment box. So I totally get that in what she's saying. Yeah, you become frustrated.
You actually you tried to get away with that on holiday. No, sorry, darling. I'm just going to the adults only bar. I'll be back in a few hours for a coffee.
Pretty much. Well, it actually got to a point where we were putting our daughter into the kids club to satisfy this itch that I had. So it's like, right, breakfast finishes at 10:30. If we get Sienna into kids club at 10, that's going to give me 30 minutes to go and get this coffee. Yeah, there you go.
I just want to pick up on one thing about the mini accomplishments, because you kind of playing it down, but I think it's a really, really good win, and it's a win for 2 reasons. So I would sometimes talk to clients about this, because when you've got those sort of things that you need to do, whether it be washing the car or whether it be like preparing a really good coffee or just getting your hands on a really good coffee, there's kind of 2 things really, because when you get that task completed, you feel good and your brain will release some really positive neurotransmitters, so you feel good. But it also takes things out of what I would refer to as your stress bucket, because, for example, if you go on, I've got to clean the car, it's like the school holidays, I've got a week off and I've got to clean the car, and then you don't do it Saturday and you don't do it Sunday, and it starts to just eat away at you.
Yeah.
And every time you kind of think about it, it like just brings you down a bit. So I think the idea of mini accomplishments is a really, really good one, actually, because not only do you get the satisfaction of achieving it, but then it's out of the bucket and you can forget about it. So it's like a double win, really. It's really good.
Totally true. You want to hear tomorrow's? Want to hear tomorrow's mini?
Yes, please.
Yeah.
I'm gonna scarify my lawn.
Oh, that's why we brought him on, Nibbo, to talk dirty to us.
we're sat here speechless. But it just brings me into loads of other stuff. Like, we're all of a similar age. Obviously, Colin looks a lot older, but
Thank you.
we're all around the same
Sure.
age. And I think there were definitely points in my life where I felt like I'm old enough now to have got it worked out. Say someone in their mid-30s or even mid-40s, as I am now, that I didn't know it all when I was a teenager. But I feel like I'm in a good place now. Like, I've got some good life experience behind me. And then it kind of dawned on me, maybe the really old bastards have got it right. Maybe tending your allotment and going to bed at 8:30 is the way to do things. And I'm thinking, I haven't learned that lesson yet, but they're way ahead of me. And with Skinner scarifying his lawn tomorrow, maybe that's the trajectory he's on. Maybe he's getting there before us.
I feel to some extent like a bit of a con artist being a guest on this show as some kind of guru, because I'm definitely not. But what I can say is that this whole idea of mini accomplishments has seen me through some really dark times. I've had some really unlucky things happen to me, and I'm happy to share them now. Actually, so like one of them was just after we got married to Katie, my wife. I bought her a horse riding trip with her sister, where she got to go onto the moors and have a hack. I think that's what they call it. I bought her this surprise horse riding trip with her sister, and it was about a week before we were about to go on holiday to Madagascar. Anyway, she fell off the horse and broke her sacrum and totally destroyed her back. The whole experience completely destroyed her whole summer holiday. We had to cancel the honeymoon. That was that. So it's like, right, it's not a problem. It's fine. We'll go on honeymoon in a year's time or whatever. So we did. And whilst we were actually on our actual honeymoon, my mum passed away. And that is, I have to laugh about it now, and I have to talk about it flippantly. Well, I don't have to. I feel I do. I just feel I do.
You know the golden rule of never interrupting a guest?
Yeah.
Okay, well, I'm going to. Skinner, I want to jump in right there and say that I think the factors you've just discussed, and we'll come on to discuss more, are big, important factors. And we tell men all the time that they need to talk about those big, important factors, but they feel so big and important that it feels inappropriate to have any sort of jest or laughter around that subject. But the way men talk is with jest, laughter. I don't really like to use the word banter, because I think in the past it's been used as a cover-up for bullying.
Yeah.
But it is that kind of bantery kind of chat that men naturally gravitate towards, and a lot of the men I know, including myself, will want to express something but feel like, the best way I know to do this is with an awkward joke. But if you don't feel like you can say it, then it stays in. So if you want to be inappropriate and talk about the passing of your dear mother with a chuckle, be our guest, literally.
Yeah, well, there you go. Yeah, and you know, as it's happened 2 years later, Dad passed away as well. So I've had a few unlucky things come about, and this idea of mini accomplishments has really been the way to see through it. And it's not in the sense of putting my head down and grinding through it. I don't see it like that. It's just through, like you said there, Brad. I'm going to call you Brad. I'd usually call you Smudger, but I'm going to call you Brad for this show. About taking things out of your stress bucket, even though having to clean the car isn't a stress. But for me, through those periods of time, and actually throughout almost my entire life post 18, the gym has been my sanctuary, really. Going to the gym and having a workout has always been like my safe place, and that's been a constant throughout my life. But throughout all of that time, I think what I've also learned is that grief is weird as well. Grief is a really strange and thing to deal with, because when both of my parents died, it wasn't that sort of classic film scene where I'm lying in the corner of a room with my head in my hands in tears, and I've drawn the curtains and I'm sat there for 3 weeks without talking to anybody. I kind of didn't have that. I didn't really cry at the time for either of them, but since then it's been weird little things that have triggered me. Like my uncle died last year, and for some reason that really that did actually make me cry. At the point, it was my dad's brother, and my dad was really close to him, and when I heard that news, I cried about it, and I'm like, whoa, this is really weird, because why didn't I react like this to either of my parents? But it was kind of because I knew, I suppose, that my dad would have been really upset about the fact that his closest brother had died. So anyway, what I'm hitting on here, I suppose, is that grief just takes time, it takes ages. And I suppose what I'm slightly annoyed by over the years is the fact that I didn't really deal with it at the actual time. Perhaps there was an element of myself that did put my head down. Like, I remember post mum dying, 2 weeks later, I was at work grinding away. I shouldn't have done that. I shouldn't have gone back to work. I should have had a bit of time off. I needed to recognise the fact that I just needed to stay at home for a while and wash my car and scarify my lawn, but I didn't. I ground through it. But throughout my life, yeah, grief's been a weird one. And I remember splitting up with my girlfriend when I was 17, and the grief that I suffered then. And I've read things since that says, and you guys will maybe relate to this, that breaking up with someone is a form of grief. It's a form of grief. It's
it's loss, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And yeah, I remember being in tears at 17. I remember being in tears again in my mid-20s when it happened again. And then it's really strange, losing both my parents, and I'm not crying. It's like, well, what's that all about? But I've no doubt that things will happen in the future that are gonna trigger me again. But here and now, like, I'm happy to talk about it so openly, and I know I'm not going to break down on this show or anything like that. Although that might be quite good for effect, actually.
It'd be great for the ratings if you could, Skins.
Yes.
So
I haven't got a tissue.
Cry now. Yeah, I was just going to pick up on that because I think it's a really interesting point, and I think probably in reality there's no right or wrong, and I wonder if that is something that, again, when we come back to talking about men's mental health, whether it is at some point it's ingrained in us that we suck things up, we don't show emotion, we definitely don't cry. And is that a kind of part of things? And because I can relate to that, I can relate to grandparents passing, but not crying. And I remember at the time, I was much younger then, but thinking, like, why aren't I crying? Is it weird that I'm not crying? And yet now, and it's since having Bowden, really, I can watch a video on the internet of something like relatively sad, and I'm literally crying now. And I think since being a dad, it's way more triggering for me, like that kind of emotion. But I don't think there's a right or a wrong way to deal with it. And you're absolutely right to just identify that. Actually, it just takes time. Stuff like that takes time, and we don't give ourselves time to process. Like you said, 2 weeks later, you're just back at work. And I think that's a classic male thing as well. Just dig in, and we can't be vulnerable, and we have to just get back to doing what we do. And maybe it comes from that being a bit of the protector. We don't want to be vulnerable, so we just default to, okay, I've got to protect my family, and I've got to get back to work so I can pay the bills and this, that, and the other. I don't know. They're just my sort of thoughts, really. There's not a question in there, but I think it's interesting what you said about the whole process.
I think it would be really interesting, wouldn't it, if you could do a research study and get some reliable data on comparing those that put their head down following grief or trauma and feel better as a result, compared to those that just slow down, recognise what's going on, and take the time.
Yeah.
So there are different ways of processing grief. And one of the ways is that first way you mentioned, that sort of, I think they call it the Academy Award winner method of just overachieving and overworking in every area and trying to work the grief through in that way, versus the people that stop and really feel it. But the overriding message with any of it, because there are like grief management programs that have been, apparently, I think you have to pay to go on them, so maybe be a bit dubious, but they've apparently been proven to help people process grief more effectively. But I think the key message is that it is going to take time, and it's really unnatural for us as people in Western society to process grief, because let's say that Skinner, I don't know if Sienna's got any pets or anything, but if she had a goldfish, it died, I think your response to her would be to say, it's okay. Whereas Sienna's thinking, it's not okay. The goldfish is dead and I'm sad. Whereas we default to, it either is okay or it'll be okay. We don't be like, this is grief. This is going to feel bad. We're going to need to get through this. We don't do that. We say, it'll be okay. We try to cheer people up rather than
do you think
let people feel it.
Do you think there's a gender imbalance in that as well, in the way we might deal with that with daughters as opposed to sons?
Do I think there's a gender imbalance in that? I don't know. Maybe I would say there'd probably be a bigger gender imbalance in whether that's coming from a mother or a father, is where I'd go from there.
Yeah, I think, that makes sense.
I think what we've learnt to do quite well with our little 4-year-old when she drops her chocolate pudding on the kitchen floor, and it's gone everywhere, and we don't have any more chocolate pudding, and she's in tears. At that point, we'll say, we totally get it. We get why you're feeling sad here. It's totally fine to feel sad. It's okay, like you're saying. But I think acknowledging it and just saying, totally get it. It's okay.
I'm going to tell a story, and I'll try to make it quick. But on one of the mental health first aid instructors courses that I did, we had a guest speaker. This is slightly off the subject, but you'll see why I'm telling this story. We had a guest speaker who came on and talked about how he lived with his mum when he was a child. Dad didn't live at home anymore. The parent relationship had been really abusive and a lot of physical assaults. One night he's trying to kick the front door in and he's got a knife. The mum's called the police. The police have got there, but he has managed to gain entrance to the property, and they've wrestled his dad out, and he's sat on the stairs watching all this happen below him. And a police officer, once they got the dad out of the property, a police officer noticed him sat on the stairs, took the time to take his helmet off, walk up the stairs, sit with the kid, and really try to help. And he said to the kid, "It's all right." But the kid was thinking, why doesn't it feel all right then? Why does this feel scary and horrible and not like a home should feel? And actually what his point was that he totally gets the police officer was trying to help, but that in those situations it might be more advantageous to say, it's okay that you're scared. This is like recognizing the reality of the situation, rather than trying to say, you're okay all the time. We don't need to say you're okay all the time. Skinner, we could say, when your mum passed away when you're on holiday, that's allowed to be shit. That's fine for that to be shit. Yeah. When your dad passed away 2 years later, that's allowed to be shit. It doesn't need to not be shit. I wondered what you thought about that.
I think that you've hit the nail on the head. And for me, recognising these kind of ebbs and flows of grief just coming at me where I don't see them coming at all. It's like, boom, there it is. Okay, that's fine. This is normal. Just got to thrash this out. Got to ride this wave. Here we go. And it's interesting actually, because at a point where I referred to this scenario with my uncle as well. In the past, I at the same time was suffering from stress as well, and at that point in time, I had to throw the towel in. And I remember I sought counselling at that point. It's like, wow, I've got grief going on. I've got stress going on. This is a whole whirlpool of absolute madness. Like, I need to talk to somebody about this. And I remember the counsellor says to me, first session, okay, so what do you want to gain out of this process? And I'm like, well, I want to learn some breathing techniques to deal with this stress. I want to, maybe visualization. I don't know, progressive muscular relaxation, something like that. She's like, well, I'm going to stop you there. This isn't about trying to deal with the stress when it comes. This is about trying to prevent it from even getting anywhere close in the first place. And I think that was really good advice. There was a lot to do with the process of counselling, and everybody responds to it differently, I guess. But I remember she tried to explore things in my childhood, try and explain my grief and my stress, and that approach didn't really work for me. What had happened in my childhood, it wasn't really correlating to me, to the emotions that I was feeling at that point in time, and that didn't help. But that one, probably she could have saved herself a whole load of time if we just hung up on that call after about 30 seconds of her saying that first point. Well, this isn't about reacting to you getting stressed and how you're going to get out of that horrible moment of feeling stress. It's about stopping it, how to prevent it. And an awful lot of the time, it's just about slowing the hell down. But I'm a bit of a weird one when it comes to stress, because I can feel myself doing more. This is where mini accomplishments get dangerous. I feel myself going into 6th, 7th, 8th gear, working faster and faster and harder, doing things that I don't even need to do. And luckily, I've started to recognise that when I'm getting stressed, the cars are getting washed, the windows are getting washed, the floor's getting hoovered, the lawn's not scarified now. The lawn is getting fertilized. The lawn is, I'm going out with scissors and edging my lawn. I can feel myself just cranking up the gears when I start to get stressed. So I'm still learning, I think, to not do that, because what I'm doing is I'm making it worse for myself. So yeah,
I think that's a really good one, but it's also just about sort of changing the lens a little bit on the mini accomplishments. So actually, one of those mini accomplishments becomes chill out and watch a film with Katie, or take Sienna to the park. And so you still keep rolling with your mini accomplishments, but you're aware, that awareness that you've just described. Oh, I think I'm like going up a little bit here, and factoring that in, I think is is perhaps a way of trying to support that. Because again, I totally relate to that. I'm not very good at slowing down, at stopping. I always feel like I should be doing something. Lots of people will be able to relate to that in terms of still having quite a long way to go in terms of that learning process. The other thing I just wanted to pick up. Sorry, go on.
Yeah, no, go on. You go.
I was just going to say that what the counsellor said to you about the prevention, essentially prevention is better than cure. And I think that would be a massive step forward if people were to view any sort of counselling or any sort of therapy as that also. Because I think usually we only default to those process when we're in the crisis and the chaos. Yeah. But actually, if we were able to just take some time, like you said, sometimes you just need to slow down and take some time. And some people that might be enough to just slow down and reflect themselves. But for other people, it might be good to speak to a counsellor or a therapist of some description, not because everything's going wrong, just like every now and again, just to help kind of refocus and recenter and just keep everything in perspective. But we don't tend to have that approach over here.
No, absolutely. And you guys will relate to the fact that the profession that we've chosen to be in is a ridiculous one.
Yeah,
it's just stupid, really, what we do in a normal day. I operate in just your kind of normal, bulk standard, large secondary state school, and it gets to 9 o'clock, and I've already been working 3 hours, working at 100 mile an hour. And as we got to the end of the summer term now, I knew that if I didn't have a period of complete shutdown, I was going to get home and continue at that pace, and the cars would have been cleaned, the lawn would have been scarified in the first evening of that summer holiday, or of this summer holiday, if we hadn't have gone away. So one of the reasons we went away is because I said to Katie, we need to get away, because otherwise I'm just going to stay around here. I'm going to do loads of what other people call chores, but I'm going to be doing loads of mini accomplishments, but far too many mini accomplishments in a day. So the only way to stop doing those is to get away, and that looks different for a lot of people. But for me, it's weird. I don't know if it's middle-aged, Phil. I appreciate sitting around a pool now and drinking a beer massively. Good. Whereas 10 years ago, it was about climbing up Machu Picchu or going to South Africa and trying to ride a rhino or something like that,
Skinner, can I just ask, when you're in that place of high stress and sort of high velocity and high momentum, I suppose I'd call it, does that affect your sleep? Because one of the things we know is that good sleep can equate to good mental health, and that good mental health can equate to good sleep, and then the reverse is also true.
Do you know, it's funny you asked that question, because when this period of like extreme grief, I'll call it, don't know if it was extreme really, but it felt like it at the time, extreme grief and the stress hit at the same time, I woke up in the middle of the night and I said to Katie, oh my God, I feel like I'm having a heart attack. Like, my heart's going crazy. I haven't slept all night. I honestly don't know what's going on. And she's like, you are not going to work tomorrow morning. You need to go to the doctor. You need to get checked out. I did. I went to work. I lasted 2 hours. I came home, saw the doctor, explained what had happened. He's like, you've just had a panic attack. I was like, okay, right. Never had one of those in my life before. And there it was. It struck me in the middle of the night, and I genuinely thought I was having a heart attack.
Yeah.
It felt like heart palpitations, probably that felt like it was, and it was that made me realise I needed to properly sort myself out there.
Can I ask at that point, the mental health first aid for panic attack is incredibly simple, and it's to ask the person that's experiencing it, if possible, have you experienced this before, and what do you think would help? So in that initial instance of experiencing a panic attack, what would have helped you? Because sometimes people get really prescriptive about, here's a brown paper bag, breathe into that, let's go for a walk, I'll hold your hand, and it can be too much. Is there anything that you feel like would have helped you in that moment?
God, it would have been, well, I suppose at that moment in time I was fortunate enough to be able to sit up in bed and talk to my wife about what was going on.
Okay.
And I think I remember, it's like 3 or 4 a.m. in the middle of the night, and I'm saying to her, I'm thinking about this, I'm thinking about that, I'm thinking about this, and I just listed it all off. And she's really good. She's kind of really, really sympathetic, empathetic, really emotionally intelligent, all things that I'm not really. And she calmed me down in that situation. And I suppose I've learned quite a lot from that. It's like at school when we're dealing with the child that comes to you in floods of tears, probably only up until very recently, I would always react in a situation like, oh my God, this is bad. Can you not go and talk to somebody else? I'm not the best guy to talk to here. I think over the last couple of years, I'm still probably not the best guy to talk to. I now get it. That phrase of I totally get why you feel like this. It's totally normal to feel like this.
Yeah.
And often it's about taking them to the best person to talk to, but recognizing the emotion and acknowledging it is key, I think.
I've got an interesting slant on panic attacks, and I just spoke to somebody about this the other day who'd had a panic attack, and this might kind of go against some of the things that Matt, as a mental health first aid instructor. But when I was training as a hypnotherapist, I remember somebody asking the question about panic attacks, because it's something that we would do with people when we first meet them. Have you ever had a panic attack? The person who trained me, he was very experienced. He had quite a positive slant on a panic attack, and hypnotherapy by its very nature is to focus on kind of positivity and develop a positive mindset. But he sort of said, actually, panic attacks are awful. When you're experiencing a panic attack, it's awful. But actually, it's kind of like your body's way of giving you a shake. Do you know what I mean? In terms of, actually, your body is now saying to you, skin dog, you've covered this and you've buried that and you're going back to work and you just and actually we're not doing it anymore. And it's that kind of like that, your body's way of kind of saying to you, look, we need to slow down. I've been giving you all of these signals and you're ignoring them all, so I'm going to do this now, and then you have to listen. You can kind of, although it's a horrible thing to experience, actually we can view it, a panic attack, with almost a bit of a positive lens.
For some reason, I don't know why I've just thought of this, but wouldn't it be brilliant if, when we all were in a moment of this heightened sense of anxiety or stress or grief or whatever, just a little fart or something acknowledged that you were in that space, rather than a full-on panic attack?
Yeah.
Wouldn't it be great if we could evolve into a situation where a fart would signal that we need to slow down?
Exactly what Brad's just said is that we don't pay attention to the little stuff, so it has to be a big thing.
It'd have to be a big fart. Big fart.
That's it. No, that's it. Nibbo's hit the nail on the head there. You shit yourself 3 times before that panic attack.
Literally true.
So weird though. I've never had one before, never had one since. But you are so right there, Brad, in the sense that is exactly what happened. It was like everything needs to stop, even though I did get I came straight home pretty much. But yeah, really weird. Thought I'd had a heart attack. There you go. Nuts.
And one of the deep ironies it's just the stigma, isn't it, around mental health, that when we get the physical health equivalent of that, people know to be concerned, but not overly concerned. So as PE teachers, all three of us, will understand the physiology of someone fainting, and it's literally mechanically getting the head down so blood can go back to the brain and stop kind of being pulled in centrally. It literally causes you to bump like that, and you have to take that seriously. You have no choice. But when it's a panic attack, which is the mental health equivalent, I'm starting to think that, yeah, it's literally a massive warning sign saying, stop, this needs to be the priority now. That feels more concerning than somebody fainting. Like, you wouldn't be on a podcast saying, I fainted once. That's not a big deal, is it? But a panic attack feels like a far bigger deal.
Yeah, absolutely. And it wasn't, I think people probably think of a panic attack as somebody being in floods of tears and screaming and shouting and shaking in the corner of a room. For me, it wasn't that at all. I'm sat up in bed. I feel like I'm having a heart attack. And I'm thinking everything's going at 100 miles an hour in my head. I'm not crying or anything, or shouting or anything like that. It was literally that physiological reaction. It wouldn't have been heart palpitations, but I wish I'd had this watch on actually at the time. I wish I could have seen my heart rate at that point in time, because it must have been ridiculous, I reckon. I would have had a look, It's yeah. So recognizing, I think, that a panic attack is not always this big, massive fireworks event. It is important for everybody. It probably looks different.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
For our sort of main question, Skin Dog, we do our would you rathers, and actually we picked some ones that are proven to be really relevant because you've actually spoken about it a lot already. So my first would you rather question to you, which we're going to start with negative emotions so we can move on to something more positive afterwards, is would you rather feel grief or would you rather feel helplessness?
And we're not saying that you would think either one would be positive. No. It's just which one's less negative.
I think I would rather feel grief because to some extent I'm in control of that, and grief is something which inevitably is going to come in ebbs and flows, and you've just got to ride it. Whereas helplessness, you can't do anything about that situation. There's nothing you can do to help. So therefore, I'll take grief.
I think that makes perfect sense, actually. And you've spoken a lot about it already, and I agree. Actually, grief. You can do things. You've already talked about things that you've done to help yourself, to support yourself. But if someone's in that state of mind of just actually helpless, then where do we go from there? So, and unfortunately, it is part of life, isn't it? We are all going to experience that, to different degrees. And it's the way you experienced it particularly challenging because of the context and how quickly you lost both of your parents. I'm glad you sought out the means of getting some help, and that Katie's given you that support, and that all sounds really positive.
Colin, there's a really common theme that we're identifying, I think, with men, and I'd be really interested to hear from women if they feel differently to this. All the time when we ask men about which negative emotions would they rather feel, they almost always pick the one that they feel they could control the most. I think women might be slightly different. I don't know. And obviously to understand what it is to be female helps us understand what it is to be male. But yeah, men always seem to gravitate towards that thing that they can have control over. And I just thought that was interesting.
Yeah, I think, it goes back to, the very basis of this show, isn't it? When we first started talking about it, I remember you flagging the idea of takeaways. People like to have something to take away, to start doing immediately. And I think it's very much a male kind of mindset. Generally, the male mind is quite sort of logical. We have boxes for stuff. Skin Dog has a box for his lawn, and a box for the van, and a box for his car, and a box for his wife, and we have that. So I think that's a big part of how we process anything, really. We're like, right, okay, what can I do about it? What are the logical steps to get me out of this hole? The challenge is that sometimes we get it wrong. And we go like, oh, well, I'll just go to work and I'll do this. And when I get home from work, I'll scarify the lawn. And you know, so we sometimes have misconceptions, but I think, you know, you're spot on that we try and, is that to a degree us just putting our heads down and trying to get on with other stuff, possibly? But we do like to seek out solutions.
When I think about the way that I first enrolled into counselling, it was exactly that. It was like, right, don't give me the bullshit. I don't want to talk about when I was 3 years old. I want to know a breathing technique now that I can go and do. I want to know what visualization technique. Do you know what I mean? And I think when I was like listing that off, and I'm kind of like, come on, you know, time's of the essence. Got a lawn scarify here. Her approach with me was brilliant. It was kind of like,
yeah,
just shut the fuck up a minute and just sit down and slow down and think about what's going on here.
Yeah.
I'm not going to give you all these tools after 30 minutes that you're going to bugger off and go and do, which I know is going against your whole ethos of mental health takeaways. But your show, I know, is not about taking away things that you're probably instantly going to go and do in the next minute, but it's things that definitely you can go away and ponder on for sure.
Do you know one of the things I'd say to that, Skinner, is that I subscribe to the stress bucket view as well, and you get problems when the stress bucket fills up faster than it's emptying. And actually, with the mental health takeaways, this excellent podcast that we're currently on, it might be the equivalent of a pinprick in the bucket. It might be something trickling out at the rate of a drop a minute. But actually, if you can get a few of those pinpricks in the bucket and just have the bucket emptying faster than it's filling up, then you're in an okay place. So actually, we know the stuff from here isn't going to change people's lives dramatic in the same way that psychotherapy would or something like that. But if it can just help shift the balance back to that stress bucket emptying faster than it's filling up, that's what we're aiming for.
Right. Right. Next, would you rather? Positive emotions this time, Skin Dog. Okay. So would you rather feel optimism or gratitude?
I think I would rather optimism, because I know I'm not very good at that sometimes.
Okay.
Sometimes it's cloudy when in actual fact the sun is peeping through. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
A fine example of that today. We were going to go to the beach today. I'm driving down there. So, it's cloudy. Actually, it was all right. And when we got there, the sun peeped out, and I think I need to learn to be more optimistic.
Okay.
I think an awful lot of that has to do with the environment that I work in. I think I work around a lot of stressed and probably unhappy people in education at the moment. And when you are surrounded by that over a long period of time, you become less and less and less and less optimistic, don't you? And actually, when I think about it, life is good. I need to appreciate the small things and hold on to those, really. And I suppose there have been times over the last 5 years where everything has been proper shit. You've got to raise your head above it all and be optimistic, because optimism is the ultimate drug, really, isn't it? Everything is going to be okay.
I think that's really useful. And I like the way you kind of framed it, as in, you're not saying optimism is better. Actually, the way you came across was actually you feel like you're quite good in terms of gratitude, but you need to work on optimism.
Yeah,
Am I right? And that's the kind of line you're going down. And I agree. In lots of work environments, I think schools are classic for it. There's a lot of stressed people, and we have mirror neurons in our brains, and it's part of kind of our human nature in terms of how we fit in. So humans by default want to fit in. So if you're constantly surrounded by people who are negative or stressed, then you just pick that up and you just give that off. In the same way, if you hang around with people who are optimistic, and it's that idea of a smile being contagious. When someone smiles at you, your mirror neurons fire and you smile back. It's the same thing. So, there's a potential strategy there, isn't there, in terms of who we choose to spend our time with. And we can't always do that in a work environment, but we can recognize, actually, no, I this would be good for me. So I'm going to make sure I spend more time with these people and less time with these people. Let's quickly do your. So we typically have a silly "would you rather" at the start to warm you up, but you just dive straight in, Skin Dog, and have been amazing so far. So, but I'm going to throw it in there anyway. And this "would you rather," it is a little bit of a silly one, but actually I think it is also potentially quite a deep one as well. So you can take it which way you choose, really. So the question is, would you rather have a pause button or a rewind button in your life?
God. Pause.
Okay.
Yeah.
Why?
I don't think you can never have regrets. Like, it's happened, it's done. There's nothing you can do about that. But I work and operate very often at 100 mile an hour, and Katie, again, she's getting a lot of credits here in this, actually, isn't she? My wife.
She is.
She's getting a lot of credit. So often she'll be like, slow down. She says that to me a lot. And I think if I had have slowed down a hell of a lot of times, possibly I wouldn't have. I don't feel like I've put my foot in it loads of times, but probably there were times I just needed to chill out more. Just stop.
Why don't you? Why don't you slow down?
Oh, I don't know. I think I blame my dad, actually. So my dad was the hardest working guy I'll ever meet, and he, as a farmer, he would work 16-hour days, 7 days a week. He never went on holiday, ever. Never went on holiday. Never stopped. And I think it was it Hutch on one of your previous shows said something like, oh no, it was you, Smudger. I think you said it. You don't lie on your deathbed thinking, I should have worked more.
Yeah, I said it, but it was a Hutch line.
Yeah, it was a Hutch line. That's it. That's where I got it from. And I was unfortunate enough, really, to see my dad on his deathbed. And I wasn't thinking that at the time because I hadn't heard that quote. But if I had heard that quote, I would have been looking at him thinking, oh, Dad, for God's sake, why didn't you stop? Why didn't you stop at times and just do something nice? Because he never did. He never did. So for me, yeah, that's a really deep answer there, isn't it? God, we've gone to...
Yeah.
Pause. Yeah, I go pause.
Yeah, cool. Nibbo.
So I've got things that I want to jump in with there, Skinner, and I think it's fascinating, and I really hope you listen to this back. You're talking about wanting a pause button because your dad was very driven and worked very hard doing his 16-hour days, and that you think you've picked up your 100 mile an hour work pace ethic from your dad. But this is a massive thing that I don't know if there's data on this, but I'm sure there should be. When we look at that from my perspective, what I'm seeing is the son of somebody who worked 16 hours a day and very, very hard, who is now, as in you, are somebody who prioritizes holidays. Now your holidays are different, by the pool now, but previously it was Machu Picchu and you spent time abroad. You've been not across the world, but you've done a fair bit of travelling, am I right?
Yeah. Well, we've been lucky enough to live abroad as well, worked abroad.
Of course.
Yeah.
And I think, bringing this back to a men's mental health perspective, I think sons generally identify with their fathers, daughters generally identify with their mothers, and that there are lots of us of bang on our generation that have had the advantage of seeing our dads overwork. I definitely saw it with my dad. Like there were times when I just didn't see him. So he was a chauffeur, but he would get tours and he'd drive people around the Cotswolds and the Lake District and wherever else. But he'd also do like Heathrow runs and stuff. And I wouldn't know if he was on a tour, if he was just working. I just knew that I hadn't seen him for ages. But that was his form of affection. That was him looking after the family because that's how he knew how to do it. And one of the things that I'm really thankful for is that I've seen that. I've learned from it that isn't how you look after your family. I know he thought that's how you look after a family, but I now have the advantage of seeing that isn't how you look after a family. My kids, it happened because of the podcast. Towards the end of this school year, I went to everything that my kids were doing at school after I said I hadn't made it to their sports day in a recording. And the guest we were on with was like, go to their sports day, go. But since then, I've been to end-of-year productions, I've been to Year 6 Leavers assemblies, I've been to watch Idris play the drums, because that is caring for a family, that's providing, and that's bringing up a family. It took a small hit in my paycheck because my work wouldn't give me the time off paid, but actually I've had the benefit of seeing my dad work too much, thinking that's what it is to bring up a family. And the reason I think it's interesting for male mental health is I don't think women of our generation have had that perspective. I don't think they saw their mothers overwork. So now they're thinking, oh, I'm going to work loads and loads and loads, and I'm going to shoot up the career ladder, and I'm going to work every hour in the day, and I'm going to get paid more. That, I don't know who told them that's winning, but that is not winning. That's losing in my book. So yeah, I think A, it's really interesting that there's the difference between men and women, but B, I think it's interesting you don't recognise in yourself that you've changed that pattern. You do go on holiday, you do take breaks, you are aware that there is a need to slow down, even if you're not great at doing it all the time, but you do it.
Yeah, really good point. And Dad never came to any of my sports days ever. He worked every single one, and Sienna's, my daughters, had one, and I got to it. It was really difficult getting to it and getting the afternoon off work, but I made it. And you're right, there is an awful lot of how he worked too much, and I've learned from that. But unfortunately, I know genetically inside me somewhere there is this drive to just operate at 100 mile an hour all the time. And sometimes it does irritate me, actually, because I can feel myself going to bed and I'm like, oh my God, I'm so knackered, when in fact I didn't need to polish the car or wash the van today. You know, it's although I don't think he saw farming as a mini accomplishment kind of thing. It was just ingrained in him. You know, he lived through generations of it. No.
Which means, by the way, Skinner, if that was ingrained in your dad for generations, and you're the change in pattern that is the start of being able to literally care for yourself more and care for your work less, you are now being an example to Sienna, who's seeing you be that example of self-care rather than be that example of overwork. And so when she reaches adulthood, her example will be somebody who worked hard but prioritized self-care as well. And that's what's important for her.
Yeah, and I think that it's really important. Matt and I have had conversations about this, because there'll be people going, but, you know, Skin Dog doesn't need to worry about that because he's got a daughter and it's going to be different. But at some point down the line, she is going to encounter men. And again, it's about thinking about it from that perspective. Actually, when you think years down the line in terms of Sienna meeting somebody, assuming it is a man, and getting into a relationship, you want her to have that understanding that, you know, probably the male of the household, they do have certain generic male traits, but actually they do prioritize those things. They know how to look after themselves and put their own mental health first, and they have that perception of how you look after your family, you know, being about the whole picture rather than just dad is absent and working. So, you know, it sets everybody up to win. I think it's really positive, really positive.
Absolutely. And when I think about the whole reason we've just been on our holiday, we were contemplating it about a month ago. You know, it's going to be tight. We haven't really got the money for it. And Katie was on the school run, and she was walking home from school with another parent. And that parent said to her, look, Katie, you need to go on holiday. You can buy back the money. You can earn back the money. You can be tight in the future. You can't earn back memories. You need to go on memories. And it's like, bingo. Yeah, okay, let's go. And it was actually her that inspired us to go and spend $3,500 on a holiday.
She's great, isn't she?
Yeah, I know.
She's great.
Oh,
I can't believe all you're getting her tonight is a lousy kebab.
I know. I'm sorry.
To share. She don't get one to herself, Bradley. She gets what Skinner's leaving over.
There's an extra bread. Extra bread in there.
And I've seen Skinner eat 2 full vegetable lasagnas in one sitting, like it was nothing. And I think he chased it with a baked potato with cheese. Like, the boy can eat.
Thank you. Yeah. Well, again, I rush it though. I rush it. It's gone. I need to pause. I need to
slow
pause
down.
I need
pause
to pause
button
after the first.
Yeah.
You won't believe this. We've mastered time travel on this podcast, and 8-year-old you has been brought into the room, and you get a minute, and we're going to be strict on this. You get a minute to tell 8-year-old you whatever you want to tell him. But after a minute, he's gone. So,
Okay.
What would you say?
Stop being a dick. Numero uno. So stop trying to be. Well, he needs to learn. Stop being a dick. Stop trying to be the class clown, and stop trying to be the chameleon to fit into every group that is existing in that school. Go and spend more time with the guys actually who you know you're getting on with, and stop trying to fit in with the groups that you don't. And I think that's something now, as we get older and wiser, we get better at, don't we? I think you realise who actually you're just wasting time with because they don't hold the same values as you. They're not particularly great to be around. Whereas as an 8-year-old, I think that we're probably all too common of trying to fit into as many different social circles as we possibly can, and it's something that we're trying to actually educate Sienna with at the moment. You know, we see her with a different circle of friends doing things that we know she doesn't like doing, and we'll watch her try and do what they're doing, and we've started to sit down and say, look, you don't need to do these things. You do what you want to do. So stop trying to fit in with what they're doing, because we know you don't like that. You can say no. And I think that's probably what I would have told myself. I think I was probably quite an irritating 8-year-old, actually.
You're quite an irritating 40-something.
I teed you up so well for that, which is really
well, I've kicked it straight through the post.
Yeah, I know.
It's a blinder. Right, he's gone. 8-year-old you has left the room. 18-year-old you has come into the room.
Okay.
Oh, God.
Young, virile, full head of hair.
Hey, hang on. Yeah,
18-year-old you's come into the room. You
Yeah.
get a minute again to tell him whatever you want to tell him.
Okay, this is quite easy, really, because when I... Hang on, 18. Yeah, when I left school at 16, I left school properly and went out to the world of work, and I didn't go into further education. But you're saying I'm not seeing him at 16, so that moment's gone. But at 18, that is when I'm just about starting to return back to further education. So what am I telling him? Oh, God, would I tell him, don't be a teacher? Don't work here?
Would you? Would you?
Oh, God. Do you know, it's a toughie, isn't it?
Do you know what? I'm going to give you carte blanche at one point here. I'm going to remove something important for you.
Right.
And say, because it's so easy for any of us in our position to say, oh, I wouldn't change a thing because then I wouldn't have my kids and I love my kids and they're the most important thing to me. I'm just going to say, for the sake of the podcast, we can assume that whatever kids you'd have, you'd love them just as much, really. If you had different kids with a different person, you'd have had lovely kids that you'd have loved just as much. That's not you saying that. That's me saying that for the sake of the podcast. Yeah, so let's just assume you'd have... Let's say you'd have the same family, but if you said, don't be a teacher, the path would be different, but you'd end up with the same family. So what do you reckon? What would you tell 18-year-old you? He's on about 45 seconds.
God, really?
Yeah.
Oh, God, I don't know. I honestly don't know.
35.
Oh, shit. Actually, yes. Stop playing football, go and play rugby.
Ooh. Why that? I love that.
Because I made the transition across at the age of 23 or something, 24 maybe, and people probably say I was shit at rugby, but I was even shitter at football, and I think I wasted way too many years trying to be good at football when I was never going to be very good at it. Probably, yeah. Should have said that. Yeah, it would be that. Go and play rugby.
What? I think people think that these chats always have to be big, important life advice.
Yeah, no, it's
but in actual fact, my path is my path because of rugby, 100%. Or then maybe not because of rugby, but a lesser known fact about Matt Knibb is that since year 7, was it year 6? Since year 6, I have grown 1 inch in height. I was the biggest year 7 you have ever seen. And I walked into school on the first week of term, and the head of PE saw me, said, "What year were you in?" I said, "Year 7. And he said, "You're playing rugby for the school on the weekend." And I was like, "I've never played rugby." So I was like, "It doesn't matter. Don't worry about that. You're playing rugby for the school on the weekend." And it was that really started my love of sport, really.
Yeah.
And then I became a PE teacher, and then the rest is history. But yeah, absolutely, sport can have a massive impact on people's lives and the sports that people choose to play.
And it would be surfing as well, actually. Like, I wish I'd started surfing. I love to go and surf now. I'm probably not particularly great at it, but I love going to do it. And I love the recreational nature of it and the fact you can, within reason, do it whenever you want. And I wish I had done that from the age of 18. Yeah.
Good answers.
Yeah, they are good answers, but they're also they're a little bit shallow, aren't they?
No, they're not in the slightest. They're not in the slightest. You're talking to two people who really think that sport can have a formative effect on people's lives. So no, not shallow at all.
Okay, there you go. And I did that within the time limit, without a doubt, 100%.
Yeah, obviously. Right, 18-year-old you has gone. 80-year-old you has shuffled into the room. You get to ask him something, but likewise, you've only got a minute. And if it took you 35 seconds to ask 18-year-old self a question, then think how long it's going to take 80-year-old you to respond to a question.
So he's now walked into this room.
Shuffled, but yeah.
Oh, you just want to hear lottery numbers or something, wouldn't you?
No, you can't do that. You can't ask him who won the Grand National.
Why not?
It's just the rules, Skinner. It's just
what rubbish game.
You're just being selfishly motivated by financial gain there. You've got the opportunity to learn the life lessons of yourself in the future. What an incredible opportunity. And you want to make a quick buck. You've let me down.
Okay, I'm sorry. What would I want to ask him?
I think I'm going to leave this pause in the edit.
Yeah, do it. What could...
Oh my God!
It's coming.
Let him think.
So I've got one 4-year-old daughter, right? I've got another one on the way in October.
What? Is this a podcast exclusive?
Did neither of you know this?
What?
No.
Unbelievable! I can't believe you've just dropped that little bombshell on us.
I can't believe you... Oh, did I just shut up? I must have...
Skinner's happy news going... You haven't told anyone else, have you? This is a world exclusive. Just play along, Skinner. Play along.
Hang on, when did I see you guys?
Are you just checking dates just to make sure it wasn't me or Nibbo?
No. So,
if she comes up handsome...
You must have been here... Yeah. You must have been here at a time when we still weren't able to tell anyone.
We're thrilled to be putting that exclusive out there when this show goes out.
Nobody else knows, and we're going to break that news.
So the question would be to him, what do I need to do to give them the best possible chance in life?
As in your children?
Yeah.
And by chance, what do you mean? Chance of success, chance of happiness, chance of financial prosperity?
Happiness.
And if you had to hazard a guess at what he might answer.
Oh, I don't know. It'd probably be something about just giving them the opportunity to, do you know, like you were saying earlier on, like going to sports days or going to, you mentioned a drum thing or something, right? Which might, to a normal parent, a drum thing might seem fairly insignificant and you don't bother going to it because you're like, oh, well, you know. We recently had a nursery graduation thing. And initially when I heard about it, it was like, that sounds fairly insignificant, really. Yeah, she's staying at the same school, same nursery. I don't need to go to that. Anyway, I did go to that. I'm glad I went to it. And for some people, it's quite emotional. So there's probably things that kids do that want us to be at and see, but we don't go. And they actually really wish we had.
Yeah.
It's, isn't it? You think about a kid's lifespan of things it lasts from the age of about 3 to 25 maybe. I'm going to get it wrong somewhere, probably. I'm going to mess up somewhere. I'm going to mess up along the line with one of them. So I'd like to know what are those things that I could avoid by going to that they're really going to value. That'd be it.
Strong answer, Skinner.
Nice, like it. I like it.
Like that very much.
Within time frame as well.
Easily within 60 seconds. If we just play that at 4 times the speed.
I've made a barista standard coffee in that time frame as well.
So we're just coming to our takeaways now. So I'll kick off with a few of the things that I've thought about, and then I'll come to Matt, and then there's also opportunity for you afterwards to, having had this conversation, is there anything that you think would be a valuable takeaway for people to, take from the episode? So we spent a lot of time at the beginning talking about your mini accomplishments, and I think that gives a bit of routine. When you talked about your takeaway, you're very specific in terms of what you like, and I think that order is probably important for you, and the gym all being really powerful. But I think the biggest thing coming from listening to you talk is that idea of slowing down and just recognizing. It's not to say that everybody needs to slow down, but from your experience of that being that, like, everything at 100 miles an hour, and I really relate to that. Just that idea of just hitting the pause button and just stopping and just reflecting, is what I'm doing making me happy? What's the impact on family dynamics? Have I spent the right amount of time with Sienna? All of those, I think it's just such a powerful thing when we enable ourselves to just pause and slow down. And I think that is probably one of the key takeaways. And I think lots of people that will resonate for. I also like the idea of just prevention better than cure. So, don't wait for things to go wrong. Actually build into your life the things that keep you where you want to be and stay there. I think they're, in a long list of things, I think probably they're the 2 key takeaways that I'm going to settle on.
Brilliant. Thanks, Brad.
Nibbo?
So I have 2. One is a lifestyle one and one is a mental health one. The lifestyle one is I just really like it when I see a pattern changer. So I think we talked about fairly towards the end of the show about Colin being a pattern changer, about how the way his dad lived, but then also numerous previous generations on his dad's side about living and working in the same kind of way, and that how actually how powerful it is to be able to be a pattern changer, but then actually how that can set the trajectory for the next generation for them to live in that more healthy, more self-care orientated, less work orientated way. And I think it's just really interesting that Colin didn't necessarily recognize that in yourself, Colin, that you are that pattern changer. And I think it takes, I think it deserves so much credit to be one of those people that thinks, I'm going to change the trajectory here, and actually the family's going to go on this line from now on. So that huge credit and kudos to you for that. And if it would make you feel more comfortable, we can give that credit to Katie because you've credited her with everything else this evening. And the other one is a mental health one. And I think it's really good general advice for anyone listening to the show is that Skinner, Colin, whatever you want to call him, is really actually very aware of his stress signature. So your stress signature is the thing you do when you're stressed that might not, for some people it's, I don't want to make it sound dismissive, but for some people it's obvious things like drinking more, smoking more, those kinds of things. But Colin's is slightly more complicated because they are otherwise positive behaviours. So Collins is more positive in terms of he's doing chores, he's washing the car, he's washing the van, scarifying the lawn, as we well know. But he's now aware that that's a stress signature for him. And then once you or people around you are observing that stress signature, we can know this person's stressed. We need to get in there and do something to de-stress this person however we can. So yeah, be aware of your stress signature and or be aware of the stress signatures of the people around you so that you can help them with their stress. Those are my two takeaways. Colin, anything that you'd add to any of those?
The only thing I would add is boundaries. Setting boundaries and understanding when you do need to just put your foot down and you need to say to somebody, or if you can, control that area of stress to not allow it to snowball. So in a work-based scenario, I think people can do that actually way easier than they think. So like, I'm really sorry, I can't do that. I can't do that yet. I'll get to it, but I can't do that by tomorrow afternoon. I'm really sorry, it's not going to happen. And having simple boundaries like that can be a lifesaver, I think, and can prevent possibly that attack that could come along. So for me, it's boundaries. Yeah,
I think that's a really good one to put in. Yeah, awesome. Wow, Skin Dog, you've been incredible tonight. First time anyone's ever said that to you, isn't it? No, it's genuinely. It's been amazing having you on. Thanks for talking so openly, for touching on stuff that has really been challenging for you in your life, and to do it all in the way you have, with a smile on your face and a few jokes along the way, is exactly what we're trying to show, really, that actually we can all talk about this as men. It doesn't have to be all doom and gloom, and there are loads and loads of things that I think lots of our listeners are going to take away from hearing your episode tonight. So on behalf of them and Matt and I, thanks for coming on. It's genuinely been an absolute pleasure and good fun to just have you on the show and talk about all of this crazy stuff.
You're welcome, guys.
Cheers, Colin. Sure. Thank you, Skinner. What a good episode. And one of the things I think we said off air at the end there was Colin saying that he doesn't really regard himself as being an expert in the field. But I think that's the key to mental health takeaways, that these are everyday men's experiences of their mental health, which will hopefully be beneficial to other everyday men.
Yeah, that's it. And I think until you've been through anything, like, no one's an expert until they've been through it, and then you're an expert in your own experience of it. We don't have to be a textbook expert on it, but here is somebody who has been through it, just like lots of other people will have been through it. Here's the way they experienced it. Here's some of the things that worked for them. I think that's what makes the everyday man an expert as well. So yeah, it's a great episode. Great episode.
Also, totally fascinating how he said about when he speaks about the passing of his mother whilst he was away on honeymoon, he can't do it any way other than with humour, which is the door we're trying to open for men to say, we know you like to involve humour in a chat, so we're not saying it's banned. Humour can be on the menu as well as mental health. They can be there at the same time.
Yeah, definitely.